Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Metabolic Radio. We're
As
back.
I look, as I look down,
We're back. Did you miss us? Did they miss us, Shane?
there's nobody in here messing with me. Oh, you didn't say mess us.
No. Did
I'm
you
just playing.
miss us?
I'm playing, dude.
Yeah. Well, so thanks for your patience in waiting for these upcoming episodes. Shane and I have just had scheduling conflicts, and life sometimes happens, and that's how it is. So here we are. But we
Yup.
wanted to get some Q&As answered. So we've got some from a number of people, and we're going to go into the archive a little bit too and answer some that we said we would get to that we haven't yet. So it is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So basically, additional calories or physical activity calories that you're burning from non-exercise related physical activities. So she's looking for a way to increase NEAT activity in a fun and creative way. She says, I do a boot camp style class most mornings, which actually would be exercise, not NEAT. Take nightly walk and bike to work, but when I'm at home, which is most of the day, I feel like I'm just sitting around all day. If anyone has found some fun ways to increase their activity level just around the house, that would be a great help. Mind you, I live in an apartment, so there's not too much room. Thanks. So, Shane, got suggestions?
Um, I had a bunch of them, but I'm trying to find it. Actually,
So,
no. In fairness, what I said, I know what I said, but it's been a long time, and it was on our forum. Um, what I said is I wouldn't be too concerned about it. That's just stuff that actually kind of happens.
NEAT.
Yep.
Well, so I mean, if you're trying to increase, your overall activity, like for example, someone who maybe exercises multiple days a week, or let's say even every day, let's say they do good exercise, but they're still considered sedentary because their NEAT is very, very low and their step count's very low. Those people can still be considered sedentary, even though they're still healthy in another sense. And so focusing on getting NEAT up would be something that might be a good exercise prescription. Well, not exercise prescription, but just advice for them in terms of physical activity. And so, if they're already exercising, but, maybe they're completely sedentary, like a desk jockey kind of a thing, then they would want to increase NEAT. So, where she said, like, she bikes to work, so that's not for the purpose of exercise necessarily. That could be considered NEAT. And then taking those nightly walks is NEAT. But fun ways, I mean, really, it can be any activity that you like. Like, I've got clients and friends that enjoy rock climbing for the sake of doing rock climbing, either indoor or outdoor, not because it's physically demanding. I mean, the physical demand is part of it, but it's really just because they enjoy it for its intrinsic value. So a lot of NEAT exercises or activities, I think, should be things that you intrinsically enjoy doing. So, other things would be, some people are recreational athletes, or, they are on a adult, low level competition rec league for kickball. Or I think I had a client go do one of those. I've got clients that play tennis recreationally, racquetball recreationally. And so really, when it comes to NEAT, it's that non-exercise related activity that you're keeping your caloric expenditure up so that you can, if your goal is fat loss, that will definitely help with your overall goal. But also just in terms of using your body as a machine, and what it's designed to do is move and move against resistance and move through planes of motion and keep mobility and stability and strength. And so I just think that any activity is good to encourage people to do, that's even outside of exercise.
No, I don't deny that. I'm just saying that I wouldn't focus on that because the honest truth is that just kind of happens through life anyway. Now, if you get up and don't move, I mean, you're going to be looking at it as an exercise concept as it is. So that's why I say, me personally, I wouldn't even focus on it. I would just focus on what I do on the exercise side and let the other stuff just kind of happen. Unless you sit around, but I don't get the impression she's that person.
Yeah, not necessarily saying that she is. Well, she did say, which is, I'm at home most of the day and I feel like I'm just sitting around all day. So, I mean, it really, that kind of depends on what she defines as sitting around. I mean, really, I'd say, I mean, and I know it's a very general, vague kind of metric, but step count. I mean, really, if you're getting your step count above that, 10,000 steps, or I really like to put myself somewhere between like 13,000 and 15,000. I actually see better benefits that way myself, not even just fat loss, but just energy. And what's this? Oh, your Fitbit. Or for those on the podcast not watching the YouTube video, Shane was holding his wrists up. I didn't know what he was doing. You have two on? Is that what it is?
I have them both on again. I'm wearing my because they fixed the sleep stuff on Fitbit
What's your
amazingly
speaking
well.
of? Oh yeah. What's your TDEE at, your total daily energy expenditure in calories? I'm curious.
3,746.
Dang, you're beating me. I'm at 3,255. But anyway, so
I'm not as walking as I usually am. 15,034.
I'm at 15,385.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway, but so here's an example of what I mean by, like, someone can exercise and still be sedentary, and their NEAT or their lack of NEAT can actually hold them back. So I trained a guy who is a computer software engineer. I believe, I know sometimes the terms get kind of mixed up and they actually have different roles, but I think that's what he did specifically. And so, like, literally when he first came to me, he was walking a total, like, it was hard for him to get more than like 1,500 steps a day because he was just behind his computer all day. And so even though he was training with me 3 times a week, such lack of NEAT and such high sedentaryism outside of the gym, I mean, that's really only 3 hours a week, right? Out of all the hours in an entire week, that's not very much to actually be demanding physical exercise or NEAT. And so it was inhibiting his goals of fat loss because there was such a lack of activity outside of it. So I think that there is still, like, you should definitely exercise, and exercise with resistance and some aerobic, depending on your goals, will definitely help, keep you seeing progress. But I think if you don't incorporate the NEAT component, it'll definitely slow you down.
Yeah, like I said, that wouldn't be my focal point because, like I said, in my eyes, every time you're moving, if you're consciously moving, it's planned for and it's beyond NEAT. But the reality of life is, yeah, I mean, if you want to get technical, anytime you're moving, you can almost classify that as long as you're not focused on doing some kind of exercise routine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
in theory, basketball, football, soccer, all that kind of stuff could fall into that category too.
If you're doing it for the purpose of exercise, yeah. So on some
I'm
level,
saying if you were just out playing it.
Yeah. So that's where I like, if it's going to be true NEAT, I think it's just got to be something that is either naturally done throughout your daily activity, like Shane is saying, or it's something that is just happens to be physical activity, but that you intrinsically enjoy for the nature of the practice itself, not because it's actual physical activity. So as for doing NEAT in an apartment, I mean, basically clean your house. There's not much other NEAT that you can do. Wash the dishes, like that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it's just going to be considered exercise. If you're moving your body and you're doing specific movements and you're doing, body weight calisthenic workouts or home exercise, I mean, that's exercise. So we're talking about non-exercise activity. So really, you're kind of limited in that sense. But what you're doing is really good with like I said, the biking and taking the walks, and then just find other things that you enjoy doing intrinsically, that happen to be physical activity, and engage in those things more often. And that'll add to your NEAT, on top of it. Or just exploit your walking or biking. Really, I mean, you don't have to do a bunch of. I mean, it's great to do variety, but you also can exploit those things that you really enjoy, or that you're already doing. But if you just want to make it more enjoyable, just do something that's enjoyable. I mean, really, that's kind of the answer.
That's why I wouldn't focus.
Yeah, Shane doesn't like to focus.
No need. So, I have a question to throw out there, and not related to this, but
oh, okay.
You know what the hole is in lifting, correct?
What's that?
You know what the hole is in lifting?
Like, no, be more specific.
So, like when you're bench pressing and the lower about 2.5 inches.
Oh, uh-huh.
That's the hole.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's the difficult spots.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben brought up something about the hole.
Oh, you're reading it right now.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah, sorry. I just didn't know what you were referencing
no,
specifically.
we didn't talk about this at a time. That's why I'm bringing
I
it up
thought
right
you meant
now.
like you were poking holes in weight training, like
No,
as
no, no,
a
no.
as
That's what I'm saying. No, this is actually the hole in when you're lifting.
Okay.
And he's asking for ways because, like I said, he's preparing for his competition. He says, let's see, any thoughts on the best ways to work the bottom end of the big three, meaning squats, deadlifts, and
Yeah.
bench press?
So he's talking about I get it. Like he's in the hole. Like when you
Yeah.
squat and you're in the hole. Okay, I get
Yes.
it. Okay. I didn't know it in relation to bench press, but yeah, I get it in terms of like deadlifts and squats.
Yeah.
So because those are the periods at which your primary movers are most stretched, so it's one of the most difficult parts of the movement, correct?
Yeah. Yes. And
Okay.
so the reason why I bring it up is because I have my thought process on this and a few things that I've already mentioned to him, but I'm curious to know what you have to say on it.
So his question is what exactly? How do
I
you
struggle coming out of the bottom of the squat, worrying the ground on the deadlift. About 1/4 of the way up, it feels really light. I just need to find a way to try and get these out of the hole.
Okay.
It would, and he said he was talking about in the big three, so that would include
Squat,
bench
dead
too.
bench.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of theories or methods of approaching with this. What I typically do is when I'm working on so let's talk about it. The whole in an exercise. Like for example, is if you're starting a squat, right? For people who don't understand, you're starting a squat. You're sitting down and back into your hips, and it's causing your quads, which are the front muscles of your legs, and your glutes to stretch as you go into that position. So when you're in the bottom of the squat, you're at a position where those muscles are fully stretched, and so they're lacking substantial amounts of strength, and that's why it's really difficult, or you get stuck, which we often refer to as a sticking point, or it could be a version of a sticking point. So it's a point that you're trying to move past, but you can't produce enough force to actually move your body and the resistance through that range of motion, so you get stuck. So the hole being at the bottom of one of these movements, where those muscles are maximally stretched, what I typically do is I will mimic the exercise, or I'll basically do the exact same exercise under and exploit time under tension. Meaning I will take a lighter weight and I will go through a fuller range of motion, and I will do partial repetitions. Like if you've ever done 21s, like with curls, for example, you'll do, and you can do it in any order, but you do like the bottom half from bottom to halfway, and then you do from half to top, and then you do the full range of motion. So you could do partial repetitions like that in any of these large movements to get better at eliminating sticking points and being better at holding resistance for more time under tension. And then in terms of producing power, because that's just going to get your body used to range of motion and stability within that range and strength within that range. But in terms of producing power to propel you forward out of the hole, I would do priming exercises and train your nervous system to be able to get the right electromuscular communication or neuromuscular communication taking place so that you can produce rapid amounts of contracting force
I would agree with
in
that.
the bottoms of those positions. So that's when you would do things like explosive squats with lighter weight coming up out of it, training your glutes to help with hip extension and your quads to fire for the knee extension harder. And then you basically follow progressive overload with that, where you're adding weight slowly over time, performing it in a powerful fashion, not a slow and controlled fashion, so that you're getting the force and power benefits out of it. And then you increase that weight up until you're at your, the weight that you want to be trying. Was he doing 1 rep maxes, he said?
No, he's preparing for his powerlifting competition.
Oh, okay. So, but they'll be doing 1 rep maxes, correct?
Oh yeah, in the competition. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I basically follow the same. I mean, I'm not a power lifter, so I don't coach power lifters. I don't compete in that. So it's not really my cup of tea fully. I couldn't give you much more advice other than what I'm giving you, but understanding how those motor units communicate.
No, and you're right. You're right on all that.
I would use that approach.
See, and I would.
Excuse
The
me.
things that I haven't posted on Facebook, I started to hint at it, but I would use, for bench press, I would use that variable
Variable
weight.
resistance.
Yeah, a variable resistance method that I kind of I wouldn't say created, but more or less created because I didn't do it with anybody else's information. That's the technique I would use for bench because that is the most it activates enough of the fibers in the timelines, and it makes it so that you would actually push more weight. Some of the higher risk things that I would do, I wouldn't necessarily. In his situation, I don't know if I would do them because it would require a spotter.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
since
the type of variable resistance that you do requires a workout partner because it's using passive forces from that third party in addition to the resistance that's being lifted on the bar or the dumbbells or however you're doing it.
Well, and it pushes you way beyond what you can actually physically do without using somebody else. But you can't really do it as effectively with squats or deadlifts. And so what I was going to say is without a spotter, it'd be tough to do it because I would actually do a very small range of motion with a lot more weight or a controllable weight in that range, which means with a squat range, you'd have to have it so that you could sit in that squat for a lot longer and stay in that range and not get out of it.
Yeah.
To give more strength.
The progression that I would tell Ben, the progression that I would follow, again, not being a powerlifting competitor, there might be a better technique out there, would be I'd create mobility first. So I'd get the full mobility that I need with the proper technique, with as little resistance, and then build up the resistance on that. So get mobility first, make sure your technique is good. Then get the stability component. So you're adding resistance to that, and you're seeing if you're actually stable within that range of motion. Because I know I have got a couple clients that can bench press. They've got mobility, they've got strength, but they don't have stability. So the bar is moving all over the place, right? So you got to have stability. You got to have mobility, then stability, and increasing strength. Once you've got those components, now you can play around with those other things that we talked about. And then I would just make sure that you're playing around with different techniques, whether it's using resistance bands or variable resistance techniques or things like that, and then explosive contractions.
I agree with
your body how to produce force.
But I'll give you the problem that there is with using bands because it doesn't help with the whole. The problem with the whole is because of the weight ratios. Because when you're using bands, even if you're using chains, as you're dropping the weight down, especially like in a bench press, or it doesn't really matter in a squat, the weight decreases when you hit the hole. So you're not really going to strengthen that hole at all. So if you're going to go into competition using those kind of things,
that depends on the tension on the band, though.
No, it doesn't, because the way it pushes against it, it withdraws weight at that point, no matter how you do it. If you tie the bands high, it pulls the weight up, so that when you're coming down, it drops the weight. If you put it down, and if you're in a squat, you're right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm visualizing in my head a squat specifically. Yes.
Yeah, but see, if you're talking deadlifts, it's not going to give enough any kind of pressure on the bottom, no matter how you do it, because it's not going to be pulling against it much in that first.
I mean, I think it
3
really
to 4
depends
inches
on where you anchor it.
No, even then it doesn't, unless you haven't, because you got to pick that weight off the ground. So if you're going down, it's going to withdraw the weight if it's above it, and it's not going to actually stretch to pull against that weight at all in that hole. So you're not going to get
what
that
if
kind
you're
of resistance.
using a resistance band that's anchored behind you, and that there's tension at you've tightened it enough that there's tension at the bottom in the hole, and it's preventing hip extension to take place during the deadlift.
If that's the case, then you couldn't pick it up.
Why is that?
Because you wouldn't be able to extend past it. If you can't, that's what I'm saying, is the problem with using your resistance at that level, you couldn't.
You're saying it'd be
might as well
too
just
much
add
resistance.
More weight. It would be too much resistance.
Okay. Interesting. I mean,
So
I haven't played around with this specific thing myself too much.
It would.
So it's this theoretically in my head.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
I think it would help with the squat. I've seen it done.
It would technically help with the squat. It would help with the squat.
Yeah, there's a trainer that she plays around with a lot of stuff like that, and I've seen her do it in squats.
It would work on the squat. It would work on the bench press.
I've seen it could help.
It would, yeah, but it couldn't help in the deadlift just for the nature of how much resistance you'd have to add at that point. You might as well just put the weight on.
Yeah.
instead of varying it. Because, like I said, if you can't break that, area, you're not going to be able to actually do the entire thing anyway.
What do you think about, and I'm just putting it out there because I haven't really thought about it, pre-fatiguing other movers? So, for example, let's say he wants better power out of his hip extension in the bottom of a squat. What do you think about pre-fatiguing his quads so that he has to, you know, how some people compensate with too much, they're quad dominant in a squat or a deadlift, and so they end up doing a lot more knee extension to kind of
Well, if they don't,
push out of
if
the
they,
beginning of the hole, and then they hip extend later. They kind of create two steps out of it.
well, I was going to say, if they're going to actually have good form, they can't do that anyway. Because
True. Yeah, it's not proper form. Yeah.
no, if somebody has, and to give an example of this, because this won't be in Ben's case, he's knowledgeable enough that he wouldn't have this problem. But if when they're going through it, their knees cave or extend out, either one of those are going to show a sign of having a quad dominant kind of situation, and especially if they collapse.
Yeah.
So if they're getting that kind of reaction, they should do something that's related to. I would almost do a hamstring based exercise actually, and pre-fatigue it to exhaustion almost, so that you actually feel it more. But the problem with doing that is it's not going to help because you're not going to have enough strength. You want to do anything where you're trying to get more strength out of the hole. You want to have as much power and strength as you can have in that
situation. You need everything firing all at once, and
right?
So pre-fatigue may actually be just limiting.
Yeah, it'd be detrimental. The things that that I did recommend online, and I actually agree with anyway, is doing super slow. Yeah, dropping the weight, don't do the same level of weight. Do it super slow.
More time under tension.
Yeah, for like 10 seconds up and 10 seconds down. That kind of stuff's going to help because it's going to actually cause strength in those timelines.
One thing I've noticed actually, in specifically coming out of the hole and in increasing hip mobility during a squat specifically, and this could work with certain deadlifts as well, is at least, well, no, because mostly with a squat, taking the same concept that you're talking about, slightly lighter weight, sitting into the hole or sitting into the pocket. I call it the pocket. That's why I didn't understand. Yeah, what
you're fine.
At the beginning of the episode, but and completely stopping and doing a brief isometric for even like 1, maybe 2 seconds, eliminating all of that elasticity. I mean, you're still under tension, but you've cut out momentum. And so
they're called pause reps.
Exactly. You're not bouncing. You're not using the elastic stretch and then slingshotting yourself back out of the hole. You're actually coming to a dead stop, and then you're firing the contractions to boost you back out. I've noticed that's helped in my squats personally.
Of course, and that does. So let me explain to you some of the stuff that's required in I'm not sure if they do it in squats. I would assume they do, but in bench press especially, you have to pause on your chest. Yeah, that's a requirement in powerlifting.
You can't bounce.
No, they want it to be completely controlled and stopped. And so what they'll do is they'll actually tell you when you can actually take it up.
Yeah, they'll say up, right? Isn't that the cue? They'll say like
something like that.
They start, and then it comes down, and then the judge is right there, and he goes up, and that's when they can push up. Yeah. And
they actually have you stop. It's the reason why it's called a pause rep is because it usually takes a second or two before they actually push it up. It's like doing a 3, 2, 1 if you can. But nobody does a 1 because they had so much weight they're doing. It's more like 3 to 4.
Yeah, it's just like inching up slowly and slowly. Yep. Okay, cool. I can't think of other ones for that question. Megan, that's his question we answered before. Hopefully that gives you some answer so far. I think we got time for one more in here. Yeah, let's get one more. Do you want to do Ben's other one, or do you want to do one of the other people's?
I'm trying to think what Ben's other one was.
It was
testosterone.
Yeah.
That's a good question, actually. You pick. I don't care.
Here, since we answered him, we'll get him in the next one as well, and then we'll get Sarah's right here. So, Sarah Bromley said, I remember us discussing this. I don't remember if we answered this on the podcast or not, but she said,
It won't hurt.
What's that?
I said it won't hurt to talk
Yeah.
about it again.
And maybe we'll say something different if we did answer it before. How much impact will my lack of sleep be having on my recovery as well as my progress in growing muscle?
That's legit. That's a legit question.
Yeah. I think the first thing that I would like to say about this is that this is the forgotten component of fitness. Recovery is something that people never plan for. They don't
Seldom.
think about, they often neglect, or it's the first thing that they get rid of when they're looking at time management, when they're trying to reach a fitness goal. Okay, well, I know I get diet and exercise, so I'll cut my sleep, and then I can focus on those two things. And the thing that people don't understand is how important recovery is, and it is an essential component for fat loss and muscle development. And if you neglect it too much, it can actually inhibit or detract and take away from your goals. And so I think this is a really great question for that reason.
Well, we can actually go beyond that because, to be honest, it's a psychological thing too.
True. Yeah.
If you don't get enough sleep, it affects you on a psychological level. Huge.
So delve deeper into that in terms of how does that negatively impact psychology?
Well, let's take it from we'll do this from a bro science level, so to make this even easier. But just imagine the fact of your mood. People's moods, if they don't get enough sleep, almost everybody. I'm not saying that everybody does, but the majority of people do. Go into a bad mood and they start having a harder and harder time dealing with people in their general relationships. You know what I mean? It's pretty self-evident that it doesn't have a good mental component to it at all.
Yeah. You're not only prone to physical stresses, which we can talk about in a sec, but psychological stresses in that you're just more, like, for myself, I'm more irritable. I have less patience. I am more negative. I'm more cynical when I have not gotten adequate sleep.
Yep.
When we're talking about the physical and physiological changes that take place, you got hormone releases that take place. So chronic lack of adequate sleep can elevate cortisol levels. So now you're under physiological stress, which can
it does that
impact,
no matter how
psychological. Cortisol is a catabolic hormone towards muscle and a fat storage hormone in extreme, chronic doses. Another thing would be nervous system recovery. I mean, part of the reason you sleep is because your nervous system is firing all these electrical impulses all day long, especially if you're doing a lot of resistance training and you're trying to grow muscle, Sarah. You're fatiguing the crap out of your nervous system. And so that's why people who engage in resistance training activity, they're often recommended more sleep than the average individual because they do need more than average recovery time for their nervous system to be able to recover. So that's another thing when you talk about chronic fatigue is it may not even be, it's often hormonally related, but sometimes it's just nervous system related. It's you're not getting adequate recovery in that regard. And so you're getting this constant fatigue and stress that's taking place from a lack of adequate recovery in that regard.
No, that's all true. Absolutely.
What else? So we got decrease for men and women, but it'll be more dramatic in men, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a decrease in testosterone. That's when during sleep is when your testosterone is resynthesizing and is going to peak in the morning. And so when you cut those sleep cycles short, you're either inhibiting natural testosterone increases or could be detracting from them or diminishing them slightly, not necessarily to nothing.
You brought up a pretty good factor in cortisol because cortisol levels go up if you have inadequate sleep like crazy. So,
inadequate, right?
Yeah, that's what I said, yeah.
Oh, okay. You cut out for a second, so I thought you said adequate sleep.
Well, then everybody probably thought that, and I did not say that.
Okay, so we got cortisol, testosterone impacts, nervous system impacts, protein synthesis. Protein synthesis
All
is
right.
essentially muscle repair. And so if you're shortening certain sleep cycles, I can't remember if it's during REM or deep, but during sleep cycles, you're undergoing a specific amount of protein synthesis. So you're literally in this repair mode from the breakdown that you've done through your exercise. So when you shorten your overall sleep, you shorten your cycles, your deep and REM sleep cycles. Excuse me. And so now you're getting fewer minutes spent in those higher protein synthesizing cycles. And so it can inhibit repair and or growth if your goal is muscle development in that regard as well. I don't know the correlation between that and soreness. I would
No,
I
that's
would
different.
theorize that might be the case, but not
No,
necessarily.
yeah, there's a lot to that. We can go into that, but that's going to be a long. We could do a really long episode on that. So I will make this easy on information on this because I'm looking at what it says on the Fitbit app, and this is true.
And this is what the question came up, is because my question specifically of whether it's deep or REM, because I haven't studied that particular area of human physiology and things like that. And apparently it's the Fitbit claims that the deep and the REM cycles are separate cycles. Yes.
Oh, they are.
Okay.
They are. They
So I was
separate them
not
out.
familiar
So,
with that. Yeah.
oh yeah, deep's a lot different than REM. REM's actually active.
Yeah, it's the rapid
So
eye movement, but I thought that was during deep periods.
no, it's totally different. So here's how it works. And like I said, I'm going to break this down using Fitbit because it's the easiest way to do it, not because it's the most accurate, but it's been accurate enough. So REM works with memory and moods. In the time you do it, your heart rate elevates and you actually breathe faster, and because you are in a state where it's trying to activate all these different.
And that's
thought
the dream
processes.
state, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
That's the heaviest dream state. That's the one you remember the most. So then it talks about light sleep, and that's more of physical and mental restoration. And then deep sleep helps with physical recovery aspects and memory and learning.
So actually, I am curious during which sleep cycle protein synthesis takes place. So let's check that out real quick. Bear with us, people. During which sleep cycle does protein synthesis take place?
I would say that it takes place majority in deep.
That's what I'm thinking. But like I
It
said,
might-
this is
it
not
might- it
my
might be
area.
light.
So
It might be light too.
we do strive to find the right answers for you people, even if we don't have them ourselves. Sleep and
Yeah.
is dependent, synaptic plasticity. Nothing I'm finding right off the bat, but I did get a couple studies that pulled up about it, but I'm not going to have you guys hang on there while we read through this. So I'm just curious on which cycle that would be in.
Keep talking.
So, okay, we talked about some hormone impacts, some neurological impacts, muscular impacts, protein synthesis. We talked about mood and psychology. What are we missing from recovery?
We pretty much hit it most.
So, yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas, Sarah, on that. Basically, let's reiterate the question. How much impact will my lack of sleep be having on my recovery as well as my progress in growing muscle? Let's be honest, okay? It really depends on your body and the cycles that you go through and how fast you recover. For example, I've got clients that just for the life of them can't sleep more than 6 hours. Not because they're under stress or because they're insomniacs or anything like that, but because they get a full night's rest. They don't have interrupted sleep. They sleep well, and their body wakes them up without an alarm clock, and that's just their sleep cycle. That's just what their body tells them to do. And some people I know need 8 or 9 hours of sleep. Otherwise, even if they get 7.5, they just feel so fatigued and they don't feel recovered. And so it really depends on the level of training that you're doing. that's going to cause, it's going to determine how much sleep you need, as well as the rate of recovery that you have. But so, I mean, if you're getting 3 hours of sleep, I think it's definitely going to impact your results. I think if you're getting 7 hours of sleep, it's probably not going to have a huge negative impact. It will probably have a noticeable impact, because personally for me, I operate best on 8.5 hours of sleep during a specific even time frame. I even know my time frame where my sleep is optimal. And I notice how that impacts my workouts. Currently, I am averaging 6 hours of sleep, and I notice it in my workouts. My strength is down. My motivation for working out is down, and those kinds of things when I neglect my sleep. So it's kind of on an individual basis. You just have to analyze that for yourself. But one of the best ways to figure that out on how much of an impact it's having is track it. Get a week of solid hours of sleep that you need, like whether that's 8 or 9 or 7 or whatever. Get that consistently. Track how you feel. Track how your workouts perform. Track how your mood is. Journal this stuff. The next week, if it's a stressful week, you get 5-6 hours of sleep a night. Track all those factors. See how it impacts them. You can't manage what you don't measure. So if you track and measure those things, you'll be able to manage it better.
Agreed. I will tell you this. You'll be shocked, even though this leans towards the way I remembered it, but I didn't want to guess it, but it does make more sense. And actually, I was completely backwards in what I said based off of what I was reading Fitbit. Whole body protein synthesis actually decreases during sleep.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Which would make sense because you're not active. So your body wouldn't need to synthesize foods as much. The digestive tract works through your sleep process, but that's because of the way it works.
To my understanding, it was higher, but I don't know everything, so could be wrong. That's something.
Also, why the physical benefits of stage 3 non-REM sleep are readily apparent. Let's see, it is not at all clear what value stage 2 non-REM sleep, which accounts for over 50% of sleep period.
What's the date on that?
This is not. I don't think it lists it. Might.
I'm just curious on because timeliness, because my understanding of that, I mean, that's just been something that I've known, or my theory on it, I guess I should say.
Well, no, agreed. This is in August. This is just barely. This was yesterday. This was today.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's coincidental.
Yeah. So let's see if it talks anything about protein synthesis at all. He has 4 references. Quotes from a book, 2 books.
Nah. Depending on the book, those aren't necessarily good sources of information.
Optimum Sports Nutrition.
Anybody
that doesn't mean
that book now.
Advanced Research Press. It would be one to be
journals.
recognized, but none of them's journals.
And even journals, you should be skeptical about too.
Agreed. You got to know the basis of what they're going for in it.
Yeah. Okay.
And it does not talk about it at all, actually. Let's see. That one would. Protein synthesis does occur under conditions of sleep, but it occurs in the gastrointestinal. I knew that. That's true. Not the muscles. That's true. So he even says that it doesn't occur in the muscles at all.
Okay. Well, could be some outdated information that I've been referencing, but
it's all good.
There is some, Sarah, there's some information on the impacts that it could have for you in terms of neglecting the recovery component of fitness.
I'm going to post this.
Everybody listening, you need to remember that you think it doesn't impact your results, but it does. It's recovery is just as important as any other component. Like there was an episode that we did where we talked about what's more important, diet or exercise, 80-20 rule that everybody talks about, that is just an arbitrary number that's not based on anything. It's not about what's 80 or 20 or 75 or 25 or whatever. It's the fact that these are all essential components, and you need to nurture all of these components if you want to achieve your goals or achieve optimal health. So don't just focus only on diet and exercise and neglect recovery, and don't just focus on recovery and neglect exercise, and don't just focus on diet and neglect exercise. You need to, this is all encompassing, and you need to nurture each of these components adequately enough, or optimally if you can, and then you'll see optimal results.
And I'm going to say something I find quite humorous, because I am going to post the one that I said was technically could be classified as bro science because it is worth reading. So I'm posting it right now.
Oh, on the forum. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Sweet. Well, we're at about time, so why don't we save the rest of the questions and topics for another episode?
That works, dude.
Cool. All right, people. Well, it's great to have you as usual. Thank you for tuning in. And please go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and review. That'll help boost us in the rankings so that we can get to more people like you and help more people like you. Also, if you're not a member of our forum, go to Facebook, type in Metabolic Radio Private Forum in the search bar. Just click request to join the group. We'll add you to the group. We'll add you to the conversation, and we will answer your questions on the show, post them in the forum, or email us directly. Click on the show notes for our emails, Taylor@metabolicradio.com and Shane@metabolicradio.com, and we'll be happy to help you.
Yep.
All right. See you later.
Peace.